All right, Shabbos, say good morning. Let us begin. So we are picking up in Os Mem Zayin in Reb Tzaddik, our third shir on this particular Os. And remember again, Reb Tzaddik is going through the incredible concept that in the world of midos, character traits, or kolchos, strengths or abilities, there's nothing per se that is inherently good or bad, but rather again all a matter of how one uses that particular koach or midas. He gave examples yesterday of Rabbi Zechariah ben Avkalos. He gave examples yesterday of Shaul HaMelech, Shaul's Rachmanas, Rabbi Zechariah ben Avkalos, his Anova, his humility. So of course normally compassion, humility assumed to be good midos, but yet fundamental misapplication on the part of these two individuals, which Reb Tzaddik essentially says it really follows the following model, that my obligation in life is to use my midos in accordance with Ratzon Hashem. So when my particular character traits or strengths ultimately reinforce the will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, then the midos are being used correctly. But when they go against the Ratzon Hashem, then ultimately again those midos, those kochos, those abilities are being misappropriated. So he gives you a different example. We're picking up on page Kuf Ches. I'm sorry, not on page Kuf Ches. On page Kuf Yud in the Be'uri HaChasidus in the right hand side. So both say Sinai Tzaddik is going to do something incredible. V'zeu kishein ada ha'ada mishtamish b'mida tova kayemes utvua bo k'vi inyan ratzon Hashem v'chein hu gam lahefech. And Rabbi say now we're going to see that the opposite is true as well. In other words, in Shaul and Rabbi Zechariah ben Avkalos, we've seen examples of the corruption of positive midos. That midos which we normally assume to be good, productive, anava, humility, empathy, compassion, when they were used against the will of Hashem, by definition became negative and destructive midos. Now Reb Tzaddik is going to show that the opposite is true as well, meaning what? Hainu, the mishtamish b'mida ra, sheyesh bo kafi ratzon Hashem yisparach. That namely, you could take a midah that if you would ask most people, good midah or bad midah, they would say bad midah. But yet, if you go ahead and you use it in accordance with the will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, by definition, it's transformed into a good midah. What's an example of this? So Reb Tzaddik says as follows. He says, Matzinu sha'amru chachamenu zal le'inyan midas hakaas. For example, kas. People say kas, anger, is something very interesting. The Rambam, for example, I think I mentioned this a few days ago, but the Rambam in Hilchos Deos writes that halacha l'maisa, kas is a terrible midah which should be eliminated. Anger has no place. It's interesting. So the Rambam says, so what should a person do if they struggle with anger? What should a person do if they have a bad temper? They have a short fuse. So what does the Rambam say in his infinite wisdom? Stop getting angry. Stop getting angry. Which I will say is such a profound yesod. You know, so often we feel helpless in the realm of our personalistic issues, when we sometimes have to realize that who we are is a choice we make. I'm not talking about if somebody struggles with certain psychological issues or profound personality issues, which again could require medication, could require intense therapy. I mean just the things that often we struggle with on a basic personalistic level. Like the Rambam says, you have a short fuse. Like sometimes people say, you hear people say this, I have such a bad temper, as if they're saying, Rahman al-Itzlan, I have cancer. You know, like I have a condition that I can't control. I have a circumstance that's just beyond my ability. No, you don't. No, you don't. You have a short fuse. Okay. Could it be that you have an innate disposition to anger easily? Absolutely. A person could be born with a disposition like that, but it's your choice to perpetuate it. It's your choice to hold on to it. It's your choice not to change it. So it's an incredibly important idea. So therefore the Rambam says, if you have a problem with kas, stop getting angry. So kas, we normally assume is a negative midah, yet Reb Tzaddik shows that sometimes kas is considered to be a good midah. Gives an example. Also, this is actually a pretty wild Gemara. So the Gemara says here in Masechah Shabbos, the Gemara says, Imra Isa, left-hand column in the Be'urei Chasidus, page Yud. Imra'isa Talmud Chacham shenokim v'noter kenachash. If you bump into or run into or see a Talmud Chacham, a Torah scholar, shenokim v'noter. I will say these words are very interesting. Nokain, right? Nekama, who avenges, takes revenge. Noter, harbors animosity, kenachash, like a snake. Like a snake. So I'll say, so what does that mean? He says, Kisha'anoshim mizalzalim bo mitoch tochachto umitoch divrei shamayim v'chol shuhu l'chavod Torah. So listen to this. Essentially, what the Gemara is saying is like this. If you see a Talmud Chacham who goes ahead and is vicious towards people. Now, again, the Gemara gives a bit of context. When you see a Talmud Chacham, ultimately, again, who is trying to go ahead and advance the right hashkafas hachayim, the right outlook on life, and people degrade it. People degrade it, or people degrade HaKadosh Baruch Hu, or they degrade Torah, and the Talmud Chacham fights back with a venom, with a viciousness. Chagreyu al masnecha. What does the Gemara say? Hidabek bo. If you find a Talmud Chacham like that, stick with him. Stick with him. Embrace someone like that. Embrace. So both say it's actually quite a surprising Gemara. So what are Chazal saying? If you see a Talmud Chacham who possesses a viciousness to defend the Ribono Shel Olam and to defend Torah, especially in the face of those who disparage them, or them being HaKadosh Baruch Hu and Torah, at the end of the day, that's a Talmud Chacham. That's a person you want as a Rebbe. Right? That's a Talmud Chacham you want to forge an action to. And I both say, again, now obviously we need a little bit of context for this. What are Chazal referring to? Chazal are explaining like this. There's a time for humility, and there's a time to be mevater, right, to yield. And I will say, one of the most important things in life is, and this has been very much lost in contemporary society, just because someone says something doesn't mean you have to respond. It's very interesting that there's been an incredible role reversal that adults in our greater society, I'm talking about like now, which you see what's happening contemporarily, have been reduced to children. Like what do children do, right? One child says something and the other child reacts. And what do we teach our children? Just because there's a stimulus, there doesn't have to be a reaction. Right? Just because someone says something to you, you don't have to say something back. So obviously, again, that becomes the golden rule in much of interpersonal relationship. Sometimes you just don't have to respond. Someone says something, it's abrasive, it's hurtful, it's this, that. Sometimes you just move on. But sometimes you do have to react. Sometimes when someone says something that perhaps is damaging to Torah, that perhaps is damaging to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, someone says something that is a corruption of the Masorah, someone says something ultimately that undermines the authenticity of halacha, whatever it is, sometimes there's a time to respond, and sometimes that response does have to be vicious. Sometimes that response does have to be sharp. I would venture to say the times that a response has to be vicious and sharp are very few and far between, but sometimes it does have to happen. So we'll say, what do we call that? We call that kas. That is a form of anger. It's anger in the form of kanaos, of zealotry, but it's kas in some shape or form. And yet, what do you see? You see Chazal extolling it, right? You see the rabbi saying, oh, you see a Talmud Chacham like that? Chagreyu. Ultimately, again, go ahead and form a relationship with him. So Hatzaddik says, Hare, shechshivu chazal midazu, kevan shinasis l'shem shamayim. Rabbi, you say to yourself, my gosh, this is kas. Kas, again, the Rambam says, one of the most destructive midos. And yet here you see chazal mamish. I want to point out what's happening over here. What is the Gemara saying? Not only is the Gemara going ahead and extolling the midah, right? Not only is the Gemara going ahead and saying, by the way, it's good that Talmud Chacham is behaving this way, but what else is the Gemara saying? Chagrehu. Chagrehu means you should forge a relationship with such a Talmud Chacham. So Hatzaddik says once again, Hainu shech shivu chazal midazu, Kevan she nases l'shem shema. I both say another just display of this same Reb Tzaddik principle. Because whenever the character trait or wherever the behavior is used in conformance with the Ratzon Hashem, or as a way to ultimately actualize the Ratzon Hashem, the will of Hashem, then the midah is positive. So we'll say now I want to be clear, and especially on this. Remember the use of kas. Kas is like playing with fire. So is fire beneficial? 100%. A lot of times in life you can't accomplish things without a little bit of fire. But if it's left unchecked and used whenever, it can have a dramatic destructive effect. So I just want to be clear, Reb Tzaddik is using this as an example. Is there a constructive use for kas? And can kas sometimes become a beautiful and important midah? Yes, but only when used as a way to bring about the Ratzon Hashem, which again I will say, I would venture to say 99% of times that there's kas, it's not this kind of kas. It's not constructive kas. It's often deacon. But again, the point that Reb Tzaddik is just trying to make is the same way that humility and the same way empathy, which sound like good midos, could be terrible things when they are used against the Ratzon Hashem. Something like kas can be something constructive and positive when used ultimately to bring about the Ratzon Hashem. An incredible idea. He goes on, he said, V'yesh lahavin. They will say that Reb Tzaddik expounds on this a little bit. We'll stop over here for today. We'll pick up. We're not finished with kas just yet, right? There's still more to discuss with kas, but Emir Hashem, we'll stop over here. We'll pick up because Reb Tzaddik is blown away by this expression of Chazal regarding kas. Since kas itself, we'll just spend a few lines speaking about why kas is considered to be so dramatically destructive. So we'll stop over here for today. We'll pick up. We'll spend another day or two. Emir Hashem in Os Mem Zayim. Shkach V'Seif.